Okay, so what happens when we forget to look above the horizons of this age? Or to bring the question into sharper focus, what happens when we forget to look above the horizons of this age to see the reality of judgment? Well, Solomon's point is that once we forget, once we deny the reality of judgment, then actually we lose the perspective that allows us to live a life of wisdom. If there's no significance for anything that we do beyond this life, then everything we do within this life becomes, by definition, insignificant. We often struggle with the idea of God's judgment as if it's something that needs to be apologized for, or a problem that needs to be solved. But Solomon's point actually is that it's when we forget about judgment, that's when the problems actually begin. Generations after Solomon, another great Christian leader, the Apostle Paul, reflected deeply on the reality of life after death, of the reality of our resurrection to judgment. And as he brought that meditation to a close, he said this: "Therefore, my dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourself fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain." You see, it's only when we know that we have such dignity that we will be a call to account before the Lord for everything that we have thought and said and done, everything that we have been. When we will be called to account for the life that the Lord has given us. It's only when we begin to realize that we have such dignity that we can begin to say that anything we do really matters, that our lives have any meaning or purpose. Otherwise, says Solomon, who knows if we are any different from the animals? In some ways, to a casual observer, it looks like we have a lot in common with animals. We share the same dust, the same life, we have the same breath, we do the same things. We eat, and then we all die. And that's all there is to say if we insist on living life without reference to God. If we insist on living life under the sun. As Solomon puts it in Ecclesiastes 3:19, surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animals. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other. All have the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. You see, Solomon is lamenting what happens when we forget that there is judgment, when we forget that we are held to account. We start to think that we're on the same level, that we're no better than the animals. Well, surely we can't think that. Surely we could never get to the point of thinking that there's no substantial difference between us and animals. And yet we do. We live in a society that has almost en masse embraced precisely this folly. We're just another animal. In fact, some even go so far as to suggest that we should be giving precedence to animals. As one wag put it, though, if you tell people they are animals, don't be surprised if they start behaving like animals. And then we can go a step beyond that, and we begin to use the behavior that we see in the animal kingdom to explain and justify animalistic behavior in humans. I don't know if you've noticed that as you watch nature programs, how there are these constant parallels being drawn between the behavior of animals and the behavior of humans, as if we're all the same, really. It's amazing, isn't it? All these centuries later, the same folly that Solomon repents of actually continues to haunt our thinking about what it means to be human. But see, if we forget, whether intentionally or otherwise, if we forget that we are held to account, then this is what happens. Do you remember the book you read at school, Lord of the Flies? Well, that's what that's all about, isn't it? How when you remove structures of accountability, then there is nothing to stop us descending into the vicious behavior of a nature that is red in tooth and claw. See, if there's no God, if there's no judgment, if all there is life under the sun, then yes, that we have nothing beyond this animal life. And as the Apostle Paul again says in 1 Corinthians 15, if the dead are not raised, then let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. Or as Solomon puts it, surely the fate of human beings is like that of the animal. The same fate awaits them both. As one dies, so dies the other, all at the same breath. Humans have no advantage over animals. Everything is meaningless. All go to the same place. All come from dust, and to dust all return. Very deliberate echoes of Genesis 3. You see, it's amazing to me how gullible we are. We live in a world that tells us that freedom must be about us being able to throw off any restraint. No one gets to judge me. No one gets to impose their opinions on me. No one gets to tell me who to be. No one gets to tell me how to live. And only when I am free will I be truly happy and fulfilled. Nothing could be further from the truth. That path, the path of what we call freedom, that path is the path to futility, meaninglessness. It's only when we know that there is someone who does get to judge us, who does get to tell us who we are and how we are to live. It's only when we remember that we are not like the animals, that we were created to bear the image of God, to be like Him. Only then can we begin to trust that we have dignity, that we have meaning. And only then is there fulfillment.